This next lady is a psychotherapist, a therapeutic coach, a law of attraction life coach, and is integrating life coaching and laws of attraction. Please welcome Katherine Gregg to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you doing, Katherine?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So tell me about what is the law of attraction therapeutic coaching? What's it about?
Well, so law of attraction itself is one of many what they call universal laws, okay, or natural laws, if you like, things that just exist. They just are, you know, like gravity exists. Yeah, the sun goes up, the sun comes down, we breathe in, we breathe out, you know, the seasons change. There are certain things in life that are just immutable, you know, they're always there. And the law of attraction is one of these what they call natural laws. One of many, but probably the most profound, and probably the one that most people perhaps have heard about, if you know, with regards to this philosophy, if you like, because it has the most impact in our life, okay, on a day-to-day basis. So essentially, the law of attraction is like attracts like. Okay, so we will tend to attract a match into our life of what we put out. So you know, it matches our energy. Okay, so we're almost like these magnets. It's constantly there. It's a thing. It's there right now, you know, and it's just far more serving to us if we can acknowledge it and work with it rather than just kind of bumbling along by default like most of us do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do we recognize it? How do we?
Well, I suppose we recognize it by how we feel and how our life pans out. You know, our life is like one big mirror, okay, and it will mirror how we see ourselves. Okay, so if I don't see myself in a very positive light, my life will mirror that. I will attract negative people, negative attitudes. You know, I'll stub my toe when I wake up in the morning, and you know, the day will just roll like that. It's and whereas if I'm, you know, if I'm a positive person, if I think highly of myself, my life will tend to mirror that. And that is what the law of attraction is. Like I said, it's like attracts like.
Okay. Can people think too highly of themselves or too low of themselves, and how does that impact?
Well, again, that's down to perception, I think. Whether or not someone thinks too highly of themselves or I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking highly of yourself, but it's not about being arrogant. If I think highly of myself, that doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else. It just means I've learned to think highly of myself, and to not think highly of myself is not going to serve me, because you know, it means that my life will tend to mirror how I feel about me. So if I'm not okay, you know, my life kind of isn't okay.
So I understand that. So how does the law of attraction work with therapeutic coaching? How do you entwine the two?
Yeah, well, I've been a psychotherapist for over 10 years now. And I've been practicing the law of attraction in my own life the whole way through. And I got to a stage where I suppose therapy in its traditional form, and this is not to take away the value of it, because actually it's incredibly valuable, to the point where I set up a counselling service so that you know, people can still access that. Although I'm not working in the service, there are other people, other therapists working in the service, you know, delivering one-to-one therapy. But what I do now is I work with people who know and understand the law of attraction and who want to use it in their life and utilize it in a way that benefits them. So I came to understand some time ago that actually, you know, this is a thing, and it has such a profound impact on how we experience our life. And you know, at what point should our clients be aware of this when it comes down to their personal development, that actually if I remain in a negative state of mind,
Yes.
that my life is only going to mirror that, you know, and I am the only one who can change that. No one can do that for me.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if we realized, if we knew the energy that we give off, you know, if we gave off black smoke every time we weren't okay,
Yeah.
we would probably be a little bit more careful about what energy we're giving off, right? But because we can't see energy, we can certainly feel it. I don't know if, you know, yourself, if you've ever been in a situation where, you know, where somebody isn't okay, sometimes it feels really heavy. That energy can feel really heavy being around that person. Yeah. And you can also feel positive energy. When you're around someone who's positive, you know, the energy is uplifting and you feel good. You know, that's how you know when you're on the right track or not, is how you feel. Okay. It's like we have this range of emotions, all of us do, from you know, your top end of positive emotion to your top end of negative emotion, and varying degrees of both in the middle. And human beings, we feel these emotions, and we're supposed to feel them, you know, and it's not wrong to feel negative either. You know, negative emotion serves a purpose, because how are we supposed to know what we want until we experience what we don't want? You know, there's purpose in these contrasting emotions. It's just, you know, when we're looking at using the law of attraction with regards to personal development, what we're doing is we're retraining our belief system, okay, so that we can mostly be up this positive end of the scale, because when we can attract, and we can do it consciously on purpose if we choose to, we can attract you know, more of a desired experience.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me about so what do you do in the world of psychotherapy and life coaching then? So take me through like a day in the life of yourself.
So, like I said, the clients I work with are people who tend to already understand the concept of the law of attraction. It's not that, you know, I wouldn't work with people who don't understand it, who want to learn it. You know, that's another thing. But everybody is at a different stage in their life journey. Some people have heard of the law of attraction and it makes sense to them, but they've never really actually actively practiced it. Other people are, you know, quite avid, you know, law of attraction, you know, practicing people, but they just want to work on a particular area of their life. So what I would do is I would assess with you what your belief system is around that particular subject. So do you want to attract a partner into your life, you know, or do you want to create a business, or do you want to attract a really lovely home? What is your belief system surrounding that subject? Okay. So if I'm lacking in my own self-esteem, or I don't think too highly of myself, you know, the chances are I will keep attracting partners that in some way maybe mirror that. Okay. You know, often people will sort of say, well, you know, I keep attracting the wrong people, or you know, ultimately it's about how you feel about you. You know, your partner will only mirror how you feel about you. You know, your business will only mirror how you feel about you and how you see, you know, yourself as a successful person. So it's really about your belief system and making adjustments. And the therapeutic aspect of that is where, you know, sometimes there is a bit of therapy that needs to happen. You know, why don't I think highly of myself? And that's where sometimes we might need to pull it back and look at things in our childhood and, you know, how we've learned to see ourselves. Because all of these perceptions, all of our belief systems really form in our early childhood.
Yeah, it's interesting you say all this, because everyone's got friends that have attract the wrong type of person. You know, I've got several friends that are with partners, and then they split up, and then they come back together again, and they meet another person and split up with that person. And you think, is there something wrong with, not that there's wrong with them, but is there something not right with that person that they need to work on, like you said, for themselves, work on themselves first and get their mindset right, first of all, and then go forward. I know people that have got together with people and been through hell, and then they kind of grow together, and some people, they just grow apart. You know, I've been with my wife now over 22 years. I know I don't look over 22, but I do with this haircut. But,
yeah, the thing is with partners and relationships, you know, and yeah, absolutely, people can grow together, and that's wonderful. You know, it's wonderful if you know, if you've got that kind of a relationship where you can do that. But of course, no one's perfect. And what tends to happen, I think, when people get into relationships that don't work is that, you know, we're attracting a match to our core belief system. Okay, so, you know, if, like I said, if I don't believe that I'm good enough, or I feel inadequate in some way, the chances are my partner will mirror that in some way. Now, that's not to say that two people can't acknowledge those difficulties and work through these things. You know, we don't always have to have therapy to work on ourselves or to learn. You know, life is one big learning curve anyway, you know. So as every relationship we have and every experience we have, like I said, those contrasting experiences are important, right? Because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. But yeah, absolutely, you know, I think what often tends to happen in relationships is we tend to put the emphasis on the other person. Well, you're making me angry, Dervish. Okay, now you can't make me angry. You know, your actions might influence my anger. But I'm responsible for my anger. I'm responsible for how I feel. I'm responsible for my own energy vibration. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I think if somebody finds themselves in a toxic relationship dynamic, you know, that ends up in a breakup, the most helpful thing someone could do is, rather than blame the other person, and it may well be that there were behaviors in the other person that were unacceptable, which is why the relationship has broken up, and that's fair enough, but it's far more serving to be like, well, hang on a minute, I've attracted this as well. I have a part to play in this too. What's going on with me? So it's like the more work I do on me, and I mean, you said earlier about speaking, can someone think too highly of themselves? Well, you know, actually, I don't think they can. Like I said, there's balance. It's not about being grandiose, but the more highly I think of myself, the more pleasing my life and my relationships are going to be. And it's not just intimate romantic relationships, but friendships, working relationships,
business as well, isn't it? Business entrepreneurs, for example. I know some great entrepreneurs, and you know, Dragon's Den people as well. You know, people that have been like the coaches and the stars of Dragon's Den, and they're all, I wouldn't say they're perfect, but they're balanced. They're so balanced in their lives, and they seem to think that is why they're so successful.
Well, it is.
So it is, and so how did you get into this, and what do you enjoy about your job?
Well, I mean, it's all really been about my own journey, to be honest with you. I mean, one of the things that I say quite explicitly on my own website is that you will only ever take someone as deep as you've gone yourself, and that was told to me years ago by a teacher of mine. And you know, as a therapist, I don't know if you know much about therapists, we have a lot of therapy. We do a lot of personal development. It's a part of our training. It's just a part of what we do. And so, you know, I've done a lot of work on myself over the years. I've had a lot of therapy in different shapes and forms, and you know, and it's all been a part of my journey. But the law of attraction teachings, you know, the universal laws, when you understand your place in the universe, in, you know, in life, when you understand how it works and how you work in conjunction with it, you know, and you understand that, you know, this is what life is about. Do you know what I mean? It's as in, you understand that you can start to consciously create a life that you would like. You know, we are actually really powerful human beings. We're just kind of dumbed down and suppressed in the society that we live in. You know, and this stuff that I'm teaching it's not new stuff. This goes way back to ancient civilizations. It's just really, I think, over the 20th century, more so, it's been kind of concealed under the radar. Yeah. Okay. So what I love about my job is I love facilitating people to be okay. From going from not being okay to being okay again, then from being okay to actually really thriving. It's a really wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
So talk me through how to cope with this whole lockdown business, because this lockdown I've suffered more than the first one. The first one was a little bit of a novelty, and because the weather was better, you could go out more. You could go for a walk in the woods, or you could go down to the seafront and let my little lad play on the sand for a bit in isolation, obviously. But this one seems a lot harder mentally for me, and I know there's one death a week, easy, from people taking their own lives. I know that. So how would you cope? What's the basic methods you would suggest to cope with it?
Well, first of all, we need to give ourselves a break, because I think we expect way too much of ourselves. If you think about it, for a year now, I mean, this time last year, this is where, it was all over the news, and and there was a sort of a threat of a lockdown, if you like. Did you just lose me there?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you're back. You're back now.
Okay, shall I start again?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we all just need to give ourselves a break.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot. It's a lot, that we've been through. This time last year was when, it was all over the news, and other countries were going into lockdowns, and there was threats of lockdowns, and nobody really knew what was happening. And I don't know if you remember, but people were panic buying in supermarkets. There was no food, there was no toilet roll.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So when you think about it, for a year now, there's been a lot of trauma. And when you define trauma, it's when something happens in our world that questions our security, right? So what was isn't anymore. It's like the rug being pulled from underneath you. And we've had a lot of trauma over the last year. We can, we can't. We were sort of, we had a bit of a false sense of security, I think, in the summer, where things started to open up again. But even still, we've had to get used to wearing masks, and children have had to get used to socially distancing at school. And, it's a lot. And I think, a year down the line, when people have been in a heightened state of anxiety, ultimately fight or flight response. We're all like, what's happening next? We don't know whether we're coming or going. And long term, it's going to take its toll. In fact, to be honest with you, I think if you're not feeling this in some way, I would say that's more questionable. I think to be feeling this is actually a normal human response.
Yeah, definitely. Now I've got a brother that completely says to me that his whole life has not changed since this lockdown. And I've got another friend that said the same thing to me, and I'm thinking, but how can that be possible? How either they don't believe in what's going on, or they're just ignoring the law that we're not supposed to be social distancing, we're not supposed to be traveling unless we need to, all these things. Because definitely, I mean, the things I struggle with is, obviously, number one is not being able to go on a family holiday. Number two, I think I struggle with not being able to hug my mum and hug people and say, let's go for a beer, let's go for a coffee. You know what I mean? It's that side, that whole social element has been taken away from me personally, and that's where I'm feeling it. That's the only place I'm feeling it, really. But it has, I've tried to turn it on its head and think positively. Well, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done around the house. Even though I live in a brand new house, my wife still finds stuff for me to fix or do or paint, which is not a problem, because obviously I've got nothing better to do. Obviously I've got my full-time job and I work from home. But other than that, I mean, you know, we live on a nice development. I've got a massive lake in front of the house, so my boy just rides around there with his bike or his little car, and because I think fresh air is good for you. Just getting that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about outdoor elements, but that makes me feel okay. So we do that quite a bit. So what kind of methods would you try to include in trying to cope with this lockdown going forwards? Like, obviously we've got another few months of this, I'd say, and I think they were saying even that this is not the last lockdown. So
it's so hard, isn't it? Because we don't know whether we're coming or going, and it's the uncertainty of it as well. Okay. You know, that's another thing. You know, it's anxiety provoking, and I think the more time goes on, the more people are feeling it. And actually, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if come the summer now, once the general population have been vaccinated, if you like. I mean, I know everybody feels differently about vaccinations, and like you said with your friends, I think everybody is experiencing this in a different way. You know, some people have been sick and some people have died. Some people have lost their family members, you know, through to COVID, you know. So other people, it kind of is just business as usual because they're still working, they're still, you know, everybody is having a different experience, and that's okay. You know, how we feel is relative to us. But, you know, one of the things that I am saying to people is, you know, we have no control over what's going on. We really don't, you know. You know, but what we can do is we can take back our power. We can control how we respond to it. Yes. And like you said, being out in nature, you know, going back to what I was saying about, you know, the universal laws and natural laws, you know, there is something really calming about just being in nature. You don't get much more in the moment than nature. Right. You know, so, you know, keeping some kind of structure, some kind of routine, you know, keeping communication open. You know, we are, I think at this stage, quite within our rights to actually say to people sometimes, I'm actually really struggling. Can we book in a phone call or a socially distanced walk or a video call, or, you know, because we do need that human connection. You know, it's unnatural that we're not having it at the moment, you know, and it's a little bit like, you know, I sort of liken it to someone being in prison. Which in a sense, it kind of is a bit like that. It's we're under house arrest, I suppose. But, you know, it's up to that person. You know, they could do that prison sentence and they could, I don't know, get lost in drugs or in a gang, or, you know, make their prison sentence worse, or they could use that time and come out the other side of it a better version of themselves. You know, but, you know, reaching out to your support network, I think, is really important, you know, and talk to people about how you're feeling. If you're struggling, then, you know, like I said, I think we're quite within our rights to say, you know, I'm really struggling with this right now. I think that's understandable. I don't know about you, but if a friend of yours said that to you, I think you'd probably respond to that, wouldn't you? You'd give them a phone call or a video call or meet them for a walk.
Yeah, I mean, with my brother, I've kind of, you know, I kind of explained to him that I don't know how to feel about the whole COVID thing and the vaccines. I sit on the fence a little bit with all that, but I'm going to have the vaccination because I won't be able to go on holiday otherwise. But I said to him, I'm not saying that what they're telling us is correct, and I'm not saying that what they're showing us is correct. But what I'm saying to you is I know people that have died from this COVID, okay? I know nurses and GPs that are friends who are working 14 hours a day for the last year, okay? So I'm listening to the people on the ground, and he's going on some website somewhere and listening to conspiracies. Now, not all conspiracies are wrong. We know that, yeah. You know, if you look at JFK, for example, that they're saying that he was killed by someone else apart from the guy that was in prison for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, whatever he was in prison for. That's a conspiracy theory, but it isn't, because there was more than one shot. So
conspiracies exist.
Conspiracies do come true sometimes, but what I'm saying to him is, you have your thought and I've got my thought. let's remain friends, let's remain family and love each other from a distance, and then when it's all over, we will have a lot of fun. But he seems to have just said, whatever, I'm not interested anymore because you believe in all that bollocks, if you don't mind my language. And so I'm like, okay, fair enough. If you want to believe all the conspiracy, I'm not going to hold that against you. You've got your own brain. So it's a little bit kind of difficult to explain to people, what I'm thinking, because no one ever asked me. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't ask me. He just shouts at me or has a go at me, and I'm
well, it's really hard, because I think a lot of people are being fed different information as well through social media. There's a documentary, I don't know if you've seen it, Dervish, on Netflix, The Social Dilemma.
Yes, I've seen it. Yeah,
you have seen it. It's worth a watch. I mean, obviously somebody has also produced that as well with a perspective, but it makes sense. I think a lot of people are, depending on which camp you sit in, and I don't know why it has to be like that, but all of us feel powerless in this, don't we? So we search for something to project our powerlessness onto. And like you say, conspiracies exist. They always have done. That's neither here nor there. I mean, the Germans used to broadcast to the Jews, on their brand new televisions and in cinemas. They advertised concentration camps as being happy, safe places, and nobody knew that's what they were doing. The Jews went voluntarily to these places. Nobody knew what they were doing until afterwards, until it was too late. So like you say, these things do exist. It's just sometimes perceptions can get blown a little bit out of proportion, and I'm not saying anyone's right or anyone's wrong. It's really difficult. It's almost like if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch it, you're misinformed. And it's very hard when things aren't transparent, and when people are being fed different information. How is anyone supposed to agree? But I really hear you there, because it's getting to a stage where it's quite hard to share how you feel or your opinion, because everybody seems to have a different opinion of the situation and how they feel about it.
It's interesting. It's an interesting area, and we could talk about this all day. I'm going to move on to the next question, though. So
go for it.
This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek one, really, because it's one from my wife. She says, "How do you not murder your husband during lockdown?"
Well, I mean, I suppose I would question why we may give our husband or our wife so much power over the way we feel. And yes, I think it's really tough for a lot of families and partners at the moment, because we're in a situation it's unprecedented. We're not normally confined to the house constantly. Normally couples are independent of one another, and then we'll come back at some point of the day and eat together and sleep together, and then we go about our days. And people are being asked to homeschool their children and work from home, and it's a little bit unrealistic, I feel like, what's being expected of us, to be honest.
And I think again, go on, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think again, it's fairly expected and okay for partners to kind of feel like they want to murder each other from time to time when you're constantly in each other's space.
Do you think there's something wrong with a relationship then, if people start feeling like that? Because I know people that don't live together. They live together. They live in the same house, but they kind of don't live together, if you know what I mean. He's always at work and she's always at home with the children, and he'll go out after work in normal circumstances. That is, he would go out, have some beers and come in at 9 o'clock. He'll sit with his wife for 1 hour and then go to bed. And then in the morning, he would see her for half an hour again. So in actual fact, in 24 hours, he probably sees her 1.5 hours. And for me, that's a problem, I think. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think this situation is highlighting sort of functioning relationships. You know, I think a lot of relationships function, you know, maybe because there's children, or you know, we have a house together, or we've been together for a long time, so we function. It's more of a kind of a living arrangement rather than a relationship. So I definitely think the lockdown is pulling people up on their stuff, which is difficult, right? You know, because you know, it's sometimes we're not ready to be pulled up on our stuff, right? It's different when we're making a choice to address certain things in our relationships or in ourselves. But I feel like this situation is kind of forcing it upon us a little bit, which is why, you know, I don't think I sort of finished what I was saying earlier when I said about, you know, come the end of, I suppose, the summer. I mean, what do I know? But I mean, I'm assuming that by then we'll be out of lockdowns, and most people will have vaccinations. So there will be a perceived safety zone, if you like, which is often where people really feel it, when it's safe to. You know, it's like a soldier on the front line really isn't going to feel that the you know, the real impact of that until he gets home, right? You know, and often we don't really feel the impact of a situation until it's over. And I think people are feeling it, but it's a good thing to feel it, because the fact that you're feeling it means you're in touch with what's going on around you. You're in tune with what's going on around you, and we're human, we're not superhuman. Like, we don't have to be okay with this, but it is finding ways of being okay in something that really actually isn't okay, because it kind of isn't. It's not okay, is it?
No, it's not. So over the past few years, I've noticed that my mental state, my psychological state, is getting stronger and stronger. I don't know how I'm doing it. I don't know. I've not had no psychological experiences. I've never had any therapy, nothing like that. How do you think I've got to the stage where, or is it just, does it come with age? Does it come with, like, as I'm getting older, I'm getting more mentally strong and more psychological?
Well, some people go their whole lives without having any self-awareness, you know. But, you know, life itself, like I said, life is one big learning curve. I mean, I don't know, is that not what we're here for? Who knows? But, you know, absolutely, every next stage of our life will demand a new version of us. Every time, you know, I mean, you spoke about having a child, and you know, every time we have to step it up a notch, right? We grow naturally, we do, you know, and we can learn from all of our experiences if we choose to. There's a really famous quote, and I can't remember who it's by, but it's a good one. It's, we never lose, we either win or we learn, you know, depending on how we choose to see it, right? So, you know, I think naturally in life, as we go through it, we're going to learn through our experiences, and absolutely, with age as well, we do become more resilient, or we can become more resilient.
You were talking about energy earlier. I remember a few years ago, I was at a mosque. I think I was at a funeral. Now, my family are Muslims, but I don't practice, so I don't believe in any of that stuff anyway. But that's another story, another podcast.
Another podcast.
But I remember at the end, people were crying, and I didn't know this lady at all. Didn't know her, never seen her before. And she just put her hand on my shoulder. And I looked at her like that. And she just nodded and just walked off. And it was almost like she gave me some power for her hands, or energy, or something that made me feel all right. It was really weird. It was strange. I've never seen her since, though. I've never not seen her ever again. So I do believe in the law of attraction and some other form of power in I don't know, in the atmosphere, in the wavelengths.
Well, it's energy transference, and you, as you said earlier about missing human connection. You know, sometimes all we just need is just that. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just a hand on the shoulder to. You know, it sounds like what she gave you was acknowledgement. She was acknowledging you. She was, you know, and there's something so powerful in that. And at the moment, we're having to be like, from
Yeah.
each other, you know,
Yeah.
and we're missing that connection.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And self-perception, for example, is another thing that I've noticed. I, I, I perceive myself a certain way, but I remember growing up through the years, through my 20s and 30s, I remember people would make little comments about me. And I was thinking, am I being perceived differently to how I perceive myself? Can you kind of explain that self-perception a little bit more?
Oh yeah, well we all have a different perception, and it's all about perception, really. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
how I see you
yeah,
perhaps will be different to how you feel about you, and how you see
okay,
me will perhaps be different to how I feel about me. And our perception forms in our very early childhood.
yeah,
Okay, even before the age of 5, believe it or not. And
mm,
different approaches to, you know, human development will differ on at what point the ego forms and stuff like that, but generally it's in our early childhood. And you know, a young child can only know themselves, right?
mm,
You know,
mm,
they haven't perceived anything else yet. You know, they
mm,
have to learn, babies have to learn that, oh, mum and dad have a relationship, and oh, I
yeah,
might have a sibling there. Oh, and it's okay if mummy goes out of the room, she's coming back again. You know,
mm,
they have to learn that through experience, but until they do, it's all about them. Okay,
mm,
so a
mm,
child will base their perception based on how they feel in their circumstances. And bearing in mind, a child doesn't even know how they feel half the time. So
mm,
it's usually like a sense of rejection or a sense of love or a sense
mm,
of abandonment that, you know, the more we feel something, the more we perceive something to
yeah,
be true. Does that make sense?
yes, it
So we
does.
carry these perceptions into our adulthood, and you know, I used to get teased a lot for having red hair at school.
Mhm,
And so I grew up with this perception that, you know, I was just different to everybody,
yeah,
and that I was the odd one out, or that I
mm,
was inadequate in some way. And it wasn't until I became an adult that, you know, I realized, well, you know, that's not true. Actually, I really like
mm,
my red hair now, but I
mm,
understand as a child why I would have perceived that. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, these
yeah,
days it's really cool to have red hair. You know, it's like perception
yeah,
changes, you know,
yeah,
and perception changes over time. You know, I mean, at one stage it was illegal to be homosexual,
yeah,
right?
mm,
You know, it was in the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Health Disorders, you know,
yeah,
as a mental health disorder. You know, so this is what I mean about how perception changes. And you know, everybody sees things through a different lens
yes, yeah,
based
yeah.
on what they've learned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's weird because I've got like a 4-year-old, and we've seen him go through the stages of being a toddler, and now he's at a stage where, well, about a year and a half ago, he was going through a stage of throwing stuff across the room in anger, and my wife said, "What are we going to do about it?" And I said, "Listen, he's just going through a stage. We just need to manage it, and hopefully he'll grow out of it." And he did, and now he's in another stage of his life where he doesn't know how to communicate properly how he's feeling. So if he gets angry, he just stands there, and I don't know how such a little thing can make such a noise, but he just and he shouts so loud he nearly busts my eardrums. He just screams for like 30 seconds, and I said to her, is it? I said to my wife, is it the fact that he's got Turkish, Sicilian, Irish blood, and he's a volcano waiting to erupt, or is it the fact that we need to manage something here a little bit better, because we don't want him to grow up with a temper, obviously, and getting angry at things and shouting at things all the time. But also, I think you're right. I think you're right in saying that we all see each other through different lenses, and that's important to actually remember that, isn't it? That's
Mm.
really, yeah. Another, I think this is the last question actually, and then the floor is yours. I often have questions that whether I'm happy at the moment, could I be happier? How do you gauge how happy you are and trying to get happier, if you like. How do you go about doing all of that? Because that's a completely out of the blue for me, this question. But
I suppose, I mean, like I said earlier, we have this range of emotions. See, we're not taught this at school. You know, in fact, it would be far more helpful. I think things are changing. Schools are acknowledging emotional well-being a lot more than they ever have done. But it would be helpful for us to know that we have all these emotions and how to manage them and what they're there for. So it's like, you know, I don't know if you drive a car. Right. When you're driving your car, you need something to tell you how fast you're going. Right. And you need something to tell you when to slow down, when to fuel up, and when to get a service. And our emotions are there to serve a purpose. Otherwise, why would we have them? You know, I think people get very frightened of negative emotion. You know, we make ourselves wrong for being down this end of the scale, you know, whereas actually there's so much learning and growth down this end of the scale. So if I'm not okay, usually it means something needs tending to. Maybe I need to slow down, or maybe I need to fuel up, or maybe I'm in the wrong job. Or maybe I'm in the wrong relationship, or maybe I've just grown out of something. Maybe something needs to shift. You know, the thing is with us is nothing ever stays the same. We're always growing and we're always changing. And a good way to gauge something is by how you feel. Your feelings are your biggest teachers. Now, you know, we all have down days, and that's okay. But if something is consistently, you know, if you're going into work and you're feeling anxious every time you go in, or you know, if you know, you're wishing your life away throughout the day, every day, or if you go home at night and you're dreading seeing your wife or your husband, you know, these are really indicators. This is how we know if we're in tune with it. You know, we have everything inbuilt within us if we choose to use it, and our emotions are there as a gauge. You know, it's like if you imagine not having that gauge, you know, if you imagine putting like a smiley face sticker over your fuel gauge on your car and just going, it'll be fine, you know, at some stage you're going to break down, right? So it's actually really important that we use these as a gauge. It's not wrong to feel negative emotion, put it that way.
Okay, that's good. So have you written a book? Have you written a book?
I'm actually currently writing a book.
Good, because
Funny you should mention that.
So do you know what it's called?
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Okay, it's at that stage.
It's at that stage. But what I am currently doing at the moment as well, which is more active, is I'm in the process of recording a series of podcasts, and it's 12 podcasts, and they're just very short podcasts, but it's breaking down the law of attraction and the universal laws, all of them, and their relevance to us, their relevance to the law of attraction. So you know, so that feels really exciting. I feel really excited to be able to share this information, which, like I said before, is not new information. It's always been there. It's just been sort of pushed to the side and hidden from us almost.
So when are you the only person on the podcast, or do you have guests like I do?
For this series, I will be the only person on the podcast. Moving forward, I see that changing. But no, for now, it's called an introduction to the universal laws. So each one will be a breakdown of each of them.
Wow, I'll be listening to those, definitely. That sounds amazing. So when are you going to release that? Do you have a rough date?
Well, sometime soon, hopefully in the next month or so. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay, and where will I be able to get that? On iTunes?
It should be a bit, or YouTube, or but I like I said, I'll keep you posted.
Good, and I look forward to the book as well. Tell people where they can find you, Katherine.
So you can find me at my website, which is info@katherinegregg.co.uk. You know, and it's I mean, if there's anything that I would just say to people, you know, right now, is just look after yourselves, you know, and when I say that, I mean your emotional well-being right now is so important. you know, because if we don't look after ourselves, we, you know, how I spoke earlier about fight or flight response, you know, when the body is in a heightened state of anxiety for a long time, cortisol is released throughout the body, which really affects the immune system. You know, so it's no wonder this time around as well, this lockdown, a lot more people are getting sick. Because when you've had a society full of people in fight or flight for a year, you know, it's no wonder that you know, more people are catching COVID. So, you know, whatever it is that you need to do to just look after you, you know, and to give ourselves a break. Like I said earlier, we don't have to be okay with this. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot to handle, and we're only human. We're not superhuman.
Okay. All right. Well, Katherine, I'd love to thank you for the time you spent with me today. I really appreciated it, and I'm sure my listeners will too. I will give you a shout when this podcast goes live. Again, thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll catch up over the next few weeks, few months. And I wish you all the best with your book and your podcast, and I look forward to listening to those and reading those. And take care. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Okay, Katherine, just before you go, so we're finished now. So that was kind of a little rundown of what I normally do. Genuinely, thank you very much for your time. It's been
thank you for having me.
Very insightful. Just to hear somebody with these expertise talking to someone like me from an engineering background who has no idea about psychology, the laws of attraction, things like that. So I've learned a lot, and I'm sure my listeners will too.
Good. Right. Well, I hope it made sense.
No, you break it down beautifully. Honestly, like you just. It's almost like you were drawing pictures, and I understand pictures better than words, really. But that's what it felt like to me. So good. No, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a nice experience.
Yeah. Take care. We'll
stay in touch.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.